Dzień dobry, a specjalnym gościem rozmowy RMF FM jest Charles Michel, przewodniczący Rady Europejskiej. Good morning, Mr. President.
Good afternoon.
Sir, 2 days ago, Prime Ministers of Poland, Czech Republic and Slovenia went to Kiev. Was this mission fully authorized by European Council and European Community?
I was informed and I was consulted and I supported this mission because I think it's important to send a very strong political signal. And yesterday, when they came back to Poland, I had a phone call with the three of them and I said them congratulations, because it's important for the EU to show very clearly, very concretely that we want to support the Ukrainians. They are brave, they are courageous, they are fighting for their own future, for their land, for their children, but they are also fighting for our own European Union's values.
Why wasn't any Westerner there? Don't you think that Berlin, Paris, Brussels should be in Kiev right now?
And I think it is important to assess when it will be appropriate in order to have an added value to travel to Kiev. Personally, I do not exclude to go to Kiev when it will be possible to have a clear and a strong added value.
Polish leaders called in Kiev to create a military stabilization mission, maybe as a part of NATO or any other body. Do you support such an idea?
No, I think it's important to do everything which is possible in order to provide political support, but also material support. We have decided to provide military equipment, and this proposal is more related to NATO. And you understand that it's very important, on the one hand, to do everything in order to get a ceasefire and to have a peace process to stop those hostilities. On the other hand, to understand very well that it's important not to escalate the conflict, not to extend the conflict. And this is a very difficult debate at the level of NATO.
And soldiers with blue helmets would escalate this conflict?
I think that in the talks, in the direct talks between Ukraine and Russia, we will see if there is possible progress. We hope that there will be possible progress. But in the very short term, we have decided to implement a very strong strategy. On the one hand, we support the Ukrainian with all the possible tools, with all the possible means. And you know that for the first time in European Union's history, we decided to provide military equipment, lethal military equipment to Ukraine, and it comes in addition because the member states are also implementing bilateral support to Ukraine. Point one. And point two, we have decided very strong sanctions, impactful sanctions against the elite in Russia, against the economic landscape and financial landscape in Russia. And this strategy aims to make sure that we will be able, as soon as possible, to change the behavior of the Kremlin.
So just to make it clear, yes to sanctions, yes to military equipment, yes to financial support, but no to military troops over there in Ukraine.
But I think that we all understand that if we would send the NATO countries, we would send military troops, it would be immediately seen as the beginning of World War III. And we don't want a third World War. We want, on the contrary, to stop this war, to stop those hostilities, and to have a serious and honest peace process. Is it difficult? This is extremely difficult because, of course, we need to negotiate with someone who has decided to launch a savage war against Ukraine.
Next week, American President Joe Biden will visit Brussels and maybe Warsaw as well. What can we expect from European summit with Joe Biden?
It will be the occasion to strengthen our support to Ukraine, and we have already decided to increase the military equipment. Point one, we have decided also to mobilize financial support to Ukraine, humanitarian support to Ukraine. I'll give you one concrete example. We hope it will be possible to stop this war as soon as possible. And you understand, because of all this destruction, that it will be also important to support financially Ukraine for the rebuilding of the country. It will be extremely important to launch what I had proposed about 2 weeks ago, an international donors conference in close coordination with the Ukrainian government, with the Ukrainian authorities. And those topics will be on the agenda, and probably we'll also discuss the state of play regarding the direct negotiations between Ukraine and Russia.
Mr. President, will you call Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
I think that we must believe in international law, and in international justice. And we do not accept impunity. And that's why the international justice will have the responsibility to qualify those crimes. And certainly there are war crimes that are committed in Ukraine, but it will be the responsibility because of the international rule of law, of the international justice, to make sure that there is no impunity, because what's happening is a tragedy. The targeting of civilians, the bombings of civilian sites, this is unacceptable.
Who else can be responsible if not Vladimir Putin?
It will be, you can imagine that I have my own opinion, but because I want to show respect for the international rule of law, I think it will be the responsibility of the international courts to qualify the nature of the crimes that are committed in this country.
Do you think it is possible to make peace with a nation that is committing war crimes in Ukraine right now?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Do you believe it is possible to make peace with a nation that is responsible for war crimes in Ukraine?
I'm realistic. I'm not naive. This is extremely difficult to have a sincere and honest negotiation with a regime and with a political leader who has decided this unjustified, unprovoked, and savage war against Ukraine. But we do not have another choice. Why? Because now we have Vladimir Putin sitting in the Kremlin, and if we want to address the humanitarian topics, if we want to address the importance to guarantee as much as possible the security and the safety of the nuclear power plants in Ukraine, for instance, if we want to make progress for a possible ceasefire, we need to speak with him. I had a phone call with him a few days ago. It was the occasion for me. It was also a request by Vladimir Zelensky to discuss, to try to influence, to argue, to advocate in order to make sure that some progress will be possible, I hope, in the short term.
What terms of this peace process can you imagine?
No, I don't want to go into the details because I think that those negotiations need some discretion. But you can imagine that the security guarantees is the topic number one. Security guarantees for Ukraine, we can see how it will be important for Ukraine to get security guarantees. And certainly you understand that the question of the Donbass, the question of Crimea, these are topics that need to be addressed.
Do you think that peace is possible with Vladimir Putin in Kremlin?
We don't know what will be the situation in 1 week or in 3 months, but we know that today we have Vladimir Putin in the Kremlin, and we know that if we want to achieve results in order to protect the citizens in Ukraine and to guarantee a possible ceasefire, we need to talk with the leader who is sitting now in the Kremlin. Is it easy? No, of course, it's extremely complex, extremely difficult, and we all share the same emotions because we can see what's the level of and the intensity of the war in Ukraine, with many cities which are attacked, with the Ukrainian who are suffering.
Yes, but ceasefire is only one thing. Another question is what will happen in future. Will there be guarantees for peace in future, not only for Ukraine, but for Moldova, for Poland, for Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia?
That's why I speak about ceasefire on the one hand, but also a peace process. And we understand that if there is a peace process, what we would like, of course, it is important to take into account all the neighborhoods, to make sure. I give you one concrete example. Belarus, for instance, they took the decision to change the constitution in order to make it possible for them to have nuclear weapons. We need to address this topic because it's not acceptable, in my opinion, that tomorrow Belarus would have nuclear weapons on his soil. When I spoke with Vladimir Putin last time, I addressed this question of Georgia and Moldova, for instance. And you know that, for instance, those countries, they've also decided to apply in order to become a member of the EU. It means that the EU must be part of those discussions, because we have a role to play in order to guarantee the security of the European continent on the long term.
Mr. President, make a stop just for a second over here. Szanowni Państwo, my przenosimy się teraz do RMF24, naszego radia internetowego. Zapraszam także na ciągle rozmowy w rmf24.pl na stronie internetowej, a także na naszym Facebooku i naszym Twitterze. Okay, Mr. President, please continue. Is it possible for you to say to Vladimir Putin, please leave Ukraine alone and I will promise that Ukraine will never join European Union? Or maybe something like this is absolutely out of a question.
You know, in Versailles, in Paris, a few days ago, we made a very clear statement. We want to support the free choice of Ukraine to choose its own destiny. And it's very clear that we intend to support the European path that has been chosen by Ukraine. The debate on the enlargement is always a difficult debate, but we do not accept that someone else than the Ukrainians would decide what's the own destiny for these people and for this country. And the recent weeks, we have seen a very strong Ukrainian government, a very strong and powerful leader defending the interest of his country.
When is it possible for Ukraine to join European Union? It's a question of 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years.
We had a very good debate a few days ago, and I can tell you there is a huge support in the European Council in order to make sure that Ukraine will be able to choose its own destiny. This is one first element. But on the other hand, this is not a secret that when we speak about the enlargement, it means that we speak also about the decision-making process within the EU. For instance, this veto right is seen by many member states as an element that can make it more difficult when it is needed to act swiftly and quickly to take decisions on the EU side. Another element, you know that, for instance, in the Western Balkans, we have a process that has started with countries in order for them to become EU members. It means that we need also to take into account the broader landscape and the broader perspective. I spoke directly many times with our friend Vladimir Zelensky. He knows very well that the summit in Versailles is a good step in the right direction, but he knows also very well that we will continue our talks at the EU level and also with him on this important topic.
Short question. Is it possible for Ukraine to join European Union within, let's say, 10 years?
I do not intend, because of my
Technically,
capacity,
is it technically possible?
I don't want to say something that will create more difficulties for us to be united. I think that the big asset is the unity. And we have demonstrated the recent 3 weeks our ability to be firm and to be strong because we were extremely united. And probably we took Vladimir Putin by surprise because of our unity, because of our firmness, because of my capacity. If I would send, even if I have my own opinion, if I would send a public message on a possible timing, then I make this unity more difficult. I will not make this mistake.
Okay, Mr. President, let's talk about sanctions. A month ago, a price of €1 in Russia, it was 90 rubles. When the first wave of sanctions came up, this price rose to 170 rubles, and right now it's 110 rubles. So the question is simple. Do you think sanctions are working or maybe not?
Yes, sanctions are working. There's a lot of pressure against the regime, and we can see that the regime is more and more nervous. There are many indications, and we think that in fact what's needed. This is the Ukrainian resistance, the Ukrainian military resistance, and here also I think that Ukraine took Russia by surprise because probably the Kremlin thought before they launched this war that in a few days they would be able to take control on a big part of the Ukrainian territory. And it's not what's happening because of this very courageous resistance, point one. And in addition, with the sanctions, we have decided in Europe, but also together with our partners, we are putting a lot of pressure on this regime. And another important element is the international engagement of the international community. And here, a few days ago, there was a clear defeat of Russia at the level of the General Assembly of the United Nations. And it means that this is not a kind of confrontation between Russia and EU and NATO. This is broader than that. There is a huge international community fighting in order to protect and to defend the international law. And I'm certain that this point is also important in the field of the negotiations, because it shows the Kremlin that this is probably another mistake that they made when they decided to launch this war, because probably they thought that they would have more support in the international community, and it's not what's happening right now.
When there will be European-wide ban on importing Russian coal, oil and gas?
We are preparing all the possible options, and you have observed that in only 3 weeks we were able to decide 4 packages of sanctions. The last one yesterday with more than 600 individuals who are targeted, with about 60 entities who are targeted. The Russian Central Bank who is targeted, Vladimir Putin himself and Sergei Lavrov who are targeted, and we can see more and more effects. Today we decided to target also the steel sector, for instance, and we are ready for all the possible options, but we do not intend to communicate on that. We will monitor the situation, and we will make sure that we will be united, and we will also make sure that our sanctions are painful against the Kremlin, against the regime, and we are also trying to mitigate as much as possible the negative effects, the cost for us on the EU side, but also for our friends and partners in the world.
But forbidding Russian oil and gas is still possible, right?
When we had this debate, the 27 leaders together in Paris, we made very clear that we do not exclude any option, and we will assess on a daily basis what's needed in order to have an effect against the regime in Moscow.
Sir, almost 2 million refugees from Ukraine have already reached Poland. They get food here, shelter here. What kind of support Poland can get from European Union right now to handle these people?
You know that immediately I went to the borders in Poland with Belarus together with the Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki, and I would like to express the appreciation for the important role played by Poland, but also by the other countries at the front line. And this is our responsibility, our political responsibility, all the other member states and the European institutions, to provide as much as possible support to those countries at the front line. This is what we are doing, and we have encouraged the Commission to make concrete proposals in order to make sure that we can mobilize the tools, the means, the financial support that's needed in order to address this question. And I think that this hospitality, this is also the translation of our European Union's values. Those women, those children, those grandmothers, they are leaving the country, Ukraine, because there is this tragedy. And I feel that this is our role to make sure that we are able to help them, to support them, and to host them, to welcome them in the best possible conditions.
Will there be any European Union relocation program for refugees?
This is very interesting to observe that immediately many European Union's member states, even without mandatory rules or principles, they have spontaneously proposed to welcome and to host refugees. And of course, we need to be very well organized, and we are trying to make progress in order to make sure that we can take into account the proposals made by the governments. But I can observe that in many member states, also at the level of the municipalities, the local associations, there are offers in order to participate in this common efforts, in order to show our generosity. And if it is needed, I'm certain that the Commission will make concrete proposals in order to make sure that there are recommendations for all the member states in order to take their part of responsibility.
Many Ukrainians say that they will stay in Poland for obvious reasons. So the question, will Poland get some additional funds, some additional money just to support those people?
I think this is a legitimate expectation, and in the following days and weeks, we will work with all the European Union's member states in order to be fair and to take into account the member states which have more cost because of the current situation. This would be a fair expectation.
This decision will be made this week, next week?
This is, we have in a few days a debate again in Brussels with all the 27 leaders, with the Commission, and we are making progress day to day. And I'm certain that this topic will be addressed next week in Brussels.
What money we are talking about? What amount of money?
No, I do not intend to improvise an amount of money. It means that we need to have a serious debate together with the Polish authorities, but also with the other governments, which are assuming a big part of this responsibility.
Speaking of money, would you ask Ursula von der Leyen to unlock money from the post-pandemic recovery fund for Poland, from this resilience fund?
You know, I have the impression that the recent days, the recent weeks, some progress were made in the field of the dialogue between the authorities and the Commission, and I think that we need a solution. We need a solution. Of course, we have decided with this recovery fund to create a conditionality mechanism. We have decided to make sure that some guarantees are provided, and we need, I think, to let the Commission and the Polish authorities to work together, to coordinate in order to solve this question. And I sincerely hope that it will be possible to solve this question.
And those two things, like rule of law and this whole crisis, they are connected somehow, or we should divide it? There are two separate things.
You see, you see, there is a war launched by Russia against Ukraine. It means this is a totally different situation for the European continent regarding the security of the European continent, and we need to be 1,000% mobilized in order to be united and to be together and to take the strongest possible decisions. And we need to be intelligent. We need to be collectively intelligent. But by the way, we know that there is a debate regarding this question of the recovery fund and this conditionality mechanism, and I sincerely hope that it will be possible to resolve this question.
Your Excellency, almost last question. How do you think how this whole situation in Ukraine will end? What will happen in the end? What is the future?
The main goal, this is the defeat of Vladimir Putin. It's extremely important to stop Vladimir Putin, because we all know if we are not able to stop him in Ukraine, there is a risk of spillover effect. And it's why all the efforts must be dedicated to stop him as soon as possible, and to make sure that the EU values, and is the free choice of Ukraine, these EU values will win at the end.
The national anthem of Ukraine begins with beautiful words. Let me read them. The glory and freedom of Ukraine has not yet perished. Luck will still smile on Ukrainian brothers. So, do you personally believe in these words that luck will smile on Ukrainian brothers?
I'm convinced that the bravery, the courage in Ukraine will make the difference. This is making the difference, and I'm totally convinced that this is also fundamental for us at the EU level to demonstrate that we are serious, that we are totally committed, to support Ukraine. Because again, if Ukraine is fighting, they are fighting for themselves, but also for ourselves.
To wszystko mówił Charles Michel, szef Rady Europejskiej. Mr. President, thank you for your time. Thank you very much for this conversation. Take care.
Thank you.